That's a piece that goes with this planning piece. This is the first document that your candidate should fill out, and they should actually do this. If they have 401, the clinical, with the same kids that they're going to student teach, so if they have their 401 clinical in the fall, and then they're going to student teach in the spring, they should actually fill out this context for learning document for every single one of their classes, not just the one they're going to use for their edTPA, because what it does is make them look at the students in their class. So it goes through the demographics of the school, like for example, how many students in the classroom, is this a suburban school, a rural school, etc. And it says how many males, how many females, and then it asks, is there anything that's happening in this school that may impact how you have to teach? And so that's where they talk about prescribed curriculum and the fact that maybe they're doing a co-teaching model instead of teaching by themselves, or maybe it's they have a teacher aide in the room, that kind of thing. All good things to know before they go in, but the biggest thing is that there's a table on there where they have to fill in the information for all of their students that have IEPs and 504s with all of their accommodations and modifications. So they have to do a sit down with either you or the special ed person in the district and get all of that information filled in so that they can start learning about their students. So that's important. They also add columns and rows about struggling readers, slow learners, gifted students, so that they have all that information in there. So now when they plan their lessons, when they're going to plan for all students, that information is there and it's available. Okay, so that's called a context for learning doc, and it should be filled in right away at the very beginning of their experience with you as a cooperating teacher. The problem with, it's not really a problem, but the students that end up in a school or end up in a program where they're going to student teach in the fall means that they were in the district in the spring, and now they've got a whole new batch of students. And if that's the case, then they need to fill out those context for learning forms at the beginning of student teaching. Not that they shouldn't have done it for 401 as well, because they're also going to be doing practice teaching in there, but they need to do a new set for student teaching, because they need to know about their kids. So, but in student teaching, or the ones that student teach in the fall, that's harder. Because now, not only do they have to find out prior knowledge, but they also have to find out about their students, which is the next one up here. It says, take into account knowledge of students' development, backgrounds, assets, interests, and learning levels. Well, that's really pretty easy for students that are in there all year long with the same kids. Because by the time they student teach, they get to know their students really well. Okay? But if they're student teaching with an entirely new bunch of kids right off the bat, they don't have much time to learn about their students. So the next thing I want you to talk about is how will you help your teacher candidates learn about their students in the classroom, about their development backgrounds, assets, interests, and learning levels. What it asks for in the edTPA is their personal, cultural, and community assets. They have to plan with those in mind. And they have to relate to a central focus. So for example, if they were doing, I'm in biology again, a unit on respiration, okay, and you knew a lot of the students in your class were involved in sports, a lot of different kinds of sports, then they could talk about possibly lactic acid fermentation as part of that respiration unit and relate that back to what happened to them in gym class or happened to them in soccer practice or football practice or whatever. They're relating. And the reason that the edTPA wants them to do that, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the more connections you can make to kids and their interests, the longer that, or the more stable that learning is and the more the kids learn and the longer they retain it. So community-wise, okay, photosynthesis. DeKalb is a farming community. A lot of people depend on photosynthesis for their life's blood. Or maybe the kids all drive and they burn gasoline in their fuel tanks. And how did the energy get in the gasoline? Well, that was photosynthesis. Ultimately, it came from the sun. So you can actually relate things that the kids know back to the actual lesson. So that's huge. But you're walking into the room for the first time and you have only 12 weeks or 14 weeks to student teach. You got to learn about your kids really fast. So discuss very quickly here, another 3 or 5 minutes, how you're going to help your students do that. How you're going to help them learn about the community and their students' personal interests, and then help them relate those things to the learning content. Go.
Teaching. First day, I had my own thing, and I would test myself, and then during, right.
Sounds like some of you guys had some really awesome ideas, so let's share those out. I'm going to start with the history table here. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind, and one of the things that the candidates seem to struggle with, is when they're using the students in their classrooms' personal, community, and cultural assets. They'll go on a rant about, this student comes from a disadvantaged home, nobody's there to tell them to do their homework, so they don't work very hard. It's a really deficit view. That's not what this is asking. Okay, it's asking them to connect what you're learning in the classroom to their personal interests, community, and cultural assets. So, the more help you could give them understanding that, the better. But what are some ideas that you came up with? Kate, I heard you guys had some interesting ideas. Or cultural, I think.
We use the farm workers movement as an example where you could look at that in a district where you get a high percentage of students who were Latino, or you could use it in a rural district where you look at it very differently.
But the other one that we kind of worked on was civil rights, because a lot of this rock they cover that using your land construction to do recesses so you have to go to that. Now, if they go back, you can go back and look at it prior to the 60s, or you can even go to today when we're going on. So using reassessments probably would work. Depending on the topic, would be good to go on. And you have to go. You can't just say, oh, they're a large urban diverse population, so I'm just going to do something so right. Try to have it. Depending on the level you're teaching. So that comes out of reassessment.
Anything else? Anyone else want to share? Yes.
We said that we would encourage them to be at fall conferences and back to school night where they have the opportunity to talk with parents and hear, conversations that we have about students, characteristics, and struggles and successes during those fall conferences, so that the parents see their face and know who's going to be, the one in charge of instruction in the second half of the semester. And the student teachers will also have had an opportunity to hear about some of the strategies that maybe other teachers that are in on the conference have tried. And we also talked about giving them access to the team building documents and products that we typically create at the beginning of the year, whether it be some kind of visual or a paper that they write about themselves, or anything where they're sharing that personal information, so that they have a little bit of the background that we get as classroom teachers, but they might not be present for the activities. And then inviting them to after-school activities and going with them to the after-school activities where our students are doing music or sports or whatever, and then just modeling good, connecting, being the teacher standing outside your classroom door and showing, being in the hallway during passing period, because if you're a teacher that isn't doing that, your teacher isn't necessarily going to know to do it without modeling.
And that also segues into the classroom itself. In a 401 semester, even if it's not with the same kids, if they see you guys making those connections in your lessons and bringing that forward and seeing how excited kids get about learning when you do make it, something that's of interest to them, I think that would probably help too. So yeah, definitely, yes.
We also talked about the importance of having candidates have access to those curriculum maps, or whatever the sequence of the semester will be, so that they can think about in advance and make a strategic pick, because not all topics are equal when it comes to doing that. There will be some that are easier to relate about that and pick strategically, I think helps.
Good idea. Anyone else? Yes.
Demographic information can be acquired on the Illinois Interactive Report. And that's not going to give you an in-depth look at the students per se, but you can get some idea of the profile of the district.
Okay. Any other ideas on how the kids can get to know their students? I know a lot of you guys were talking about that when I was walking around. Yes.
I know one thing I've talked with my upcoming student teacher about is we do outdoor education out at Orlando Town. And schedule Willing, he wants to come out and attend that, be a part of that, because it says it's like a completely different setting and you get to see kids in different ways and kind of make connections with their interests. Just something that's very different than a classroom setting. And one thing that our administration has recommended to us, although I loathe to do it, is to go eat lunch with the kids.
What?
Eat lunch with the kids. And then you kind of get to know them and see them in a different way.
Yes, she did.
I don't want to do
I enjoy it. But I don't do it.
Anyone else have ways to get to know your kids? Yes.
Typically, at the beginning of the year, we send home a questionnaire for the parents to fill out, telling us things that they think that we should know about their child. We also ask for their extracurricular commitments. What sports are they involved in? Do they attend church groups? You know, we don't specifically ask those questions, but those are typically the things that the parents tell us about the students. And then we also do something in class with the kids. Either they interview a classmate to get to know them, and that helps us get to know them as well, or writing about something that they want us to know about them in their writer's notebook, or just finding those small ways to kind of get into their brains and learn a little bit more about them.
Yes.
I'm sure somebody probably already said this, but just talking with the kids, encouraging them to start working with them immediately, walk around, see what's going on, observe, ask them questions, and put them with small groups of kids periodically so they could get to know them that week. I'm just thinking the more they're with the kids that first week, they will end up coming up with questions saying, oh, they like this. So.
Yes.
Kind of connecting the comments about having lunch with the kids. Kids get really excited when there's a new kid at the school, and they want to be that buddy to show them what the school is like. So to even ask students who want to be kind of like the new teacher partner to help that person get acclimated to the climate in the school, and say, is there a couple students who'd like to come in to the classroom for lunch just to talk through what is it like to be a student at our school? That's always a possibility that can be done.
That sounds great. Yeah, awesome. Great ideas. We're going to need help with this, you guys, because especially the shy ones, you know, not all student teachers are going to be very outgoing. It seems like all the science student teachers are always like very outgoing. I don't know why that is to say, but I have seen some that are very shy and introspective, and so I think they need a little bit of help in that regard, getting to know their students, especially since they do have such a limited time in the classroom with those kids. So, okay. I think the rest of this, let's talk a little bit about plan to support academic language demands. This is, okay, we know now what academic language is, and that's all well and good, but for a student teacher to show they're proficient in academic language, they need to show how they support the students in the classroom to use that language. So I can say, okay, I want you to write a lab report for this, and I want you to, you know, these are the pieces of the lab report I want you to have in there. But if I don't explain to them what I mean by conclusions, I get nothing. I mean, I might get it turns red. Well, that's nice. A lot of things turn red. You know what I'm saying? They need to have supports in place for the students to understand what they mean by the use of that function. So any help you can give them in that regard would be helpful as well. I'm not going to have you talk about that one per se because you haven't had a lot of experience, I don't think, with academic language and what the expectations are. I think once you read the handbook, and maybe look at online. I'll put some documents in a Google Share about academic language that you can look at. So, okay, talk to them also about how to plan assessments, how to assess every day to meet those learning objectives, but that's something you guys do anyway, so I don't think we need to talk that one out. So let's look at your other roles here. You can, there are certain things you can do and can't do when it comes to this edTPA. Up until they do it for real, you can help them all you want. Okay? So if they need help, you can see that they don't know how to do scaffolded lessons, teach them how to do scaffolded lessons. If they aren't, looking at prior knowledge and they aren't using that in those lesson planning, in the process, teach them how to do that. I mean, share with them your experiences, how you plan, all of that kind of stuff. Do what you normally do as a cooperating teacher. Okay? When it comes time for the actual edTPA itself and the student teaching semester, there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. Okay? You can help your teacher candidate to select focal course periods. So for example, you're looking at the 3 periods of biology that you have, and you notice that these kids are more willing to talk, more receptive, more outgoing, whatever. And you talk that through with your candidate. See, that might be a good class to use for your edTPA. That's fine. You can do that. Okay. You can assist them to get that relevant information from the context for learning segment. That's the IEP 504 stuff. We talked about that. Confer with your teacher candidate as she selects the central focus content standards and learning objectives. You can, you can confer with them, talk to them about, okay, we're going to talk, you're going to teach, what do you think here? Here's some examples of lessons that might be good for using inquiry, because there's some really good labs that kids can do. So, you can say photosynthesis, respiration, whatever. I mean, you can have those conversations. You're not writing the lessons for them. You're just helping them pick that topic where actually they could get a really good experience out of it. So that's fine. Explain the general design of your curriculum. You're going to do that anyway, hopefully right away. In 401, you'll go through what the design of the curriculum is. This is what you'll be teaching this semester. This is what you'll be teaching next semester. Discuss how much they actually can plan themselves and how much they actually have to do based on what the district mandates that you cover, or your science department mandates you cover, or whatever. Have those conversations with them. And then most of all, you guys, here's the biggest thing. Regardless of what you think about this edTPA, the candidates have to do this for licensure. They have to pass it. And a lot of their, and I've been telling people this all along the way, the higher ed people and everyone, and you know this about your students, if they buy into it, if they think it's important, and you also think it's important, they're going to do well. If, on the other hand, you think it's stupid for them to do it, you don't think they should have to do these elaborate lesson plans, or you don't think that they should have to do this for licensure in the state because it's just this Pearson Publishing trying to get more money and all of that, then that's an attitude. And that attitude is going to filter down into the candidates, and they're just not going to do as well. And so, offer them, the emotional support. I know it's a lot of work. It's going to make you a better teacher. These are the kind of things you should be thinking about all the time anyway as you plan for lessons. You start doing it now. Eventually, it'll be just something you do because that's where you guys are all at. You don't have to write these elaborate lesson plans because it's in here. And it's come from being in the trenches for a very long time and learning what works and what doesn't work and all of that kind of stuff. Well, they haven't been in the trenches. So they still need to plan, and they need to look at all these different aspects. So that emotional support is huge. Okay? Okay. Instructing and engaging students in learning. This is where they have to videotape. Okay? So help them with the video permission guide slips. We already mentioned that. That's huge, but because we really need to get those back. We have them in English and Spanish. If you need another language, you need to let us know so that we can get a little head start on getting that translated into that other language. They're on our website, which I have on here at the end, and I'll show you that. But the teacher candidate should have that in hand. So, and that particular, if they use the district's permission slip at the beginning, like when they register, it has to have in there that the students are going to submit to a third party. If it doesn't have that in there, our candidates cannot use that permission slip. They have to use the one that's provided by the university. So districts could go in and pull that paragraph out of ours and put it in theirs, and that would work, and then you take care of it right off the bat, because then it would be good to go. Or districts could just hand ours out at registration and say, make sure it all, and then all kids would fill it out, and then nobody would have to worry about it. So depending on what your district does, but it's one of the biggest stumbling blocks. It's hard for candidates. Let's say you've got 3 kids who are really good at discussing, and they would have been amazing in the video, but they didn't bother to bring the permission back, and now you can't use them. So, okay. We already said that, allow them to practice as much as possible. And then they have to video record during that 3 to 5 days. Provide emotional support. If you have video equipment, yes?
If they don't sign the permission slip, can they still use their voice?
Yes, you can still hear the student's voice in the classroom. They just cannot be actually visibly in the, yeah, because you can't.
Those 3 that are good actors or whatever, who contributors to the class discussion, if they don't have their video permission on, they can't technically use the audio.
They could still use the audio, but it becomes kind of difficult in that when the candidate answers the prompts for the videotaping, they say at 2 minutes and 35 seconds, the boy in the red shirt said blah, blah, blah. They really ask them to do that. And then if the scorer can't see the boy really saying blah, 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 then, yeah, so, so they could use it if it's really audible. They could say the person off camera, probably, as long as you couldn't see what it was. So yeah. What else? Oh, video equipment. If you have video equipment at your schools that the candidates could use, that would be wonderful. We've had candidates across, some programs will say, no, my candidates used their iPhone, it was perfect, it worked really, really well. And some programs will say, my candidates say, don't ever, ever, ever use the iPhone. Because a couple candidates used it, they didn't have enough storage. And, 3 minutes into the video, it stopped working. So practice, 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 practice with whatever video equipment they're going to use is essential. And we tell our candidates that ahead of time, so they know that. But if you have some that you know is very good, and if you have a video club at your school, and they're willing to videotape, that would be amazing. If you're going to videotape, and a lot of cooperating teachers do videotape, you have to make sure that your students know ahead of time they cannot ask you questions. Because cooperating teachers will walk around with a videotape, and all of a sudden, because you're their teacher, they come up and ask, and of course, because you are who you are, you answer the question, and then the cooperating teacher's voice is on the video, and it's not supposed to be on the video. You're not supposed to be in the video unless it's a co-teaching experience. If it's a co-teaching experience, you can be in the video, but the teacher candidate takes the primary role in teaching the lesson. And that will be explained on their context for learning that this is a co-taught class. So they'll plan the lessons, they'll teach the lessons, but you can have, a minor secondary role in that 3 to 5 days. So it's going to change up a little bit probably how you teach in that co-teaching model, possibly. And then, what was the other thing with videotape? They can't edit it at all. They can just clip out the segments. If it's edited, it's not scored. So they have to have a nice long segment where they can pick out the best and just clip it at both ends. Yes?
Are you saying they are allowed to blur faces?
Blurring faces is the only editing that's allowed. Yeah. If you can't hear the video, which is, I know what I was going to say. If you are the cooperating teacher and you're videotaping, it's not about the teacher candidate. It's about what the students are doing and saying. So we've had some cooperating teachers that follow the candidate around, and it's just a headshot of everything the candidate is saying, and that won't work. Yes?
Well, just with that in mind, what about a GoPro? we use GoPros now for some of our, because I have a news team at our school, and we have the kids wear them for a day. So it's like from the perspective of whoever's wearing it, but then they just see the kids. Could you have your candidate do that instead? Do you know what a GoPro is?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I do. I think so, but what do you think, Kate? I think you need to see the teacher candidate at least something.
Yeah, but I think it would be cool, like when
I
they're
do
walking
too,
around
yeah.
helping.
Yeah.
I think that would be cool, yeah.
I have heard of some kind of an app on your iPhone where you can, it's like a speaker that you can sync to your video camera so that you put it in your pocket and as you're walking around, it picks up the audio and sends, but I don't know exactly what that software is. Did you hear what it is? Yes.
What we did, I monitored her video, and we had an iPad set up in the back of the room that had kind of a full view of the room, and the kids that couldn't be in it all were on the outside of that. And so I wasn't standing behind it, but it kept me out of the picture. It kept the kids from looking to me, and then the ones that were, you know, they were either in the back or on the side. And so they had the whole view of the room, and it keeps it from being adjusted too much. I think they have to send in 10-minute clips, right?
It depends on the discipline, but yeah, most of them are either 2 or 3.
Yeah, 10 minutes uninterrupted, unedited video.
Right. So it depends. When you have it in the back of the room set up like that, sometimes it's really, really difficult to hear the people at this table, and they may have said the best stuff, and you really, really want to use it, but you can't hear it. So what I tell my candidates, or did, past tense, is that right after they videotape, I mean the day they videotape, sit down, watch it, transcribe it from what you remember was being said. Because if you don't, a day later, you're not going to remember what the person in the back table said that was so awesome, but they can include a transcription with the video. Drag and speak for transcribing? There you go. Yes?
Could they put captions on the video?
No.
No?
Now, you guys, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about, I want to ease your fears a little bit. Students have been learning how to do all of this stuff in the classes they're taking at NIU. It's not your responsibility to teach them how to videotape, to teach them how to clip, to teach them how to, I mean, if you want to help them, that would be amazing, but it's not your responsibility. And if you're helping them, telling them how to clip, you can't tell them what to clip. You know, they have to pick their own clips up. You can't do that for them. So, but all of this, the planning, everything, they've been working on this, working on this, working on it, now they're going to apply it in the student teaching. So hopefully they'll come in prepared for this, and it won't be that much work for you, other than what you've always been doing. So it says, practice, practice, practice. That's huge. Any questions? Videotaping, any more? Sound like fun? How many of you guys did the national boards? The edTPA actually was designed by the people that did the national boards at scale, Stanford Center for Learning and Assessment or something like that. So it's the same stuff, it's just the national boards are the edTPA on steroids. So it's more, you have to do more, but it's very similar to this. Okay, here's the assessment piece. You guys, in your schools, helping the students understand, because I know a lot of the districts now are really, they have to get into the assessment, right? You have to look at it, you have the students make their objectives, and then you have to look at all of the data that goes along with all of the assessments, and what the students know, what they don't know at all, and what they're almost there with, and that they're working on. And then you have to use that assessment data for your next plans of instruction, right? You have to look at it critically and figure out, okay, what do we do next? Our candidates necessarily don't get that piece. So you guys are doing that in the trenches all the time. The more you can have those discussions with them on how to look at that data critically and analytically, and make wise choices about student learning in the classroom, that would be amazing. So, the edTPA asked them again to look at both strengths and needs, not just one or the other. It has to be equal. So they have to pick 3 student work samples from this assessment. They pick that one assessment that gives them qualitative and quantitative data for the entire class. Unless you have, like, for this group, it's the entire class. And then there is I should qualify that, there is a piece in there that says you can use a group if the group is such and such a size, as long as the group is part of the original class or within the context of the class. So, and that's in the handbook. So they still have to look at assessment data for the entire class. They pull 3 student work samples from that assessment data, and on those 3 student work samples, they show their feedback. So they have to give them rich. It's not just check marks and smiley faces. It's, okay, what what did you miss here? What do you need to work on? What do you need to look at? Or, wow, you did this really well. Have you ever thought of, to get them thinking outside the box and advance their learning? So both their strengths and their weaknesses, and get them to advance that learning is the goal of the feedback. If they don't have, cannot come from a deficit view at all. It has to be definitely show that you're trying to help the candidate learn. And then, again, rubric 13, that one's tough. Give students the opportunity to use the feedback. And then they have to use that big data analysis that they just did to explain their next steps of instruction. So you can assist your teacher candidate understand assessment strategies, not during the edTPA, but you got all the time leading up to the edTPA to help them out with that kind of stuff. You can't look at their assessment data from the edTPA and tell them what they should be seeing, because it's their job now. When they get to the edTPA piece, that's theirs. They do all of the planning, all of the instruction, all of the analysis, all of the reflection. That's on them. You can't help them with that. So they have to scan the work samples. Here's another thing, you guys, please remind them. Have them save everything from every lesson. Because what may happen is they may do the assessment piece incorrectly, and they may get condition codes because it can't get scored. And in Illinois, you can't get more than 1 condition code per task, or you fail. So that means they would have to resubmit that task. If they've saved everything, they have student work samples from previous assessments, so they need to scan and save everything they do, just in case they need it later on. And then they can resubmit, if it's a condition code, they can resubmit from the same 3 to 5 learning tasks, as long as it's not the same exact assessment piece, and they can still pass. So that's huge. So allow them access to scanning, have them take all of their student work samples and scan them all their assessments, scan them all, save it, put it in a file, don't lose it, and you'll have it all. And then don't throw it away until after you get your license, and you really shouldn't throw it away all. You should keep it forever. Okay, any questions about the assessment?
The feedback. So I understand, like, they planned this unit, they're instructing it, they're on day 3, they collected this assessment piece, they analyzed the data, they've got their 3 student work samples, they're giving those students feedback. But if they ask me, like, I'm stuck on this, I mean, I'm allowed to, like, have a conversation with them. I mean, I'm not telling them what to do, but if he says, like, these 2 make perfect sense, but this one I'm confused, how do I handle this?
I mean, you're looking at the actual assessment itself, the piece with your teacher handling, and you're trying to figure out.
Looking at the student sample, and, I mean, if he's just, I don't know, if he feels uncertain, he's like, well, I would recommend he do this and this and this, but I'm not sure. I mean, am I okay to kind of give him some advice in a conversation?
You can have advice in a conversation as long as it does not cross the line of telling them actually what to do. Does that make sense? You really need to guide them in a discussion, but you cannot tell them what to do.
Well, I guess the emotional support part, I mean,
definitely.
If he feels like he knows what he should do, but he just feels unsure.
But you just have a conversation with him, not necessarily about the specific student, but about that concept in general. You're not helping him write it, you're just discussing a particular topic. That's not helping him write his education. Yes.
Are the student candidates told not to ask us to look at their research? Because I know, I mean, just in my head, I know the person I am, if they went home and started working on their task here, and they came back and said, hey, can you look at this and tell me what you think? I know I would be,
They aren't necessarily told not to do that, and here's the deal. And these, even the highest rate proponents, like the highest guide scale, will tell you that it's your job as a cooperating teacher to help these students become the best teachers they can be. So, but if they let you read it, you can say, if I were you, I'd look at prompt 1 again and think a little more deeply. You cannot tell them what to write. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. But
so they can ask us to.
oh, definitely.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You just cannot tell them. We'll get to that. What unacceptable support is. So it's kind of a hard line, or a fine line, or a blurry line, but you just want to make sure you don't cross it, and it tells you exactly what you can't do coming up on the slide. So, but no, you guys, cooperating teachers huge. You need to be there for them. Definitely, yes.
You might read the results so far is that one area of efficiency or relative weakness is providing students with rich feedback, which they can use to improve their performance. And I think that intuitively, I'm just thinking that kind of response to that is for our candidates to see lots of examples of how that works, particularly in classrooms. I think that they're modeling themselves after their 6th grade teacher they had 6 years ago. They might be thinking of assessment as daily quizzes and trying kids to do their homework or something. But if they have an idea of there are opportunities built into the instructional program where students are getting feedback about what they're doing well and not so well, but they have opportunities to do similar kinds of tasks, and they have a chance to build on the feedback they receive. But I think our candidates have to see lots of examples of that and talk through what that's all about in order to be able to follow those models.
And that's a really good point. You know, we're talking about what you need to do in 401 all the way up to when they actually do it themselves. They need to see your examples of rich feedback. They need to talk to you about what rich feedback it is, and show you maybe an example of something that they, before they did their edTPA, what they did, and say, do you think the student will understand where I'm coming from here, and that kind of thing. So you're right. I think the more examples that they see from you of what really good feedback is, that in itself will be, a godsend for them, because then they'll actually, because you can't simulate that in a college class, because you don't have, the student work, and you don't have the kids, and you don't, you know what I'm saying? So that needs to definitely take place in the field. And then the use of student feedback, it's like, which is again, Rubric 13, it's like, okay, you just gave these kids the feedback, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with teachers who give the feedback. Kids will walk by the wastebasket on their way out the door. They'll never read it. They'll throw it in the wastebasket, and the next day the teacher starts the next lesson. This edTPA is saying no. That's not what edTPA is, or what the feedback is for on assessments. It's so that your students can actually advance their learning. So now give them opportunities to show they can do that. And that's why it's so difficult. It's like, okay, how do I do that? What do I have them do next? So I tell the students, pick a formative assessment early on. Don't pick the summative assessment at the end. Pick a formative assessment where you can get qualitative and quantitative data, and then give them opportunities to then use that information again as you proceed in your lessons to show how they've advanced their learning. Does that make sense? So, any other questions about assessment?
That's basically what we're doing to show our student growth too as what we're being evaluated on.
Excellent. So, like I said, guys, what you're asking them to do is basically what you're doing anyway. So, okay. 3 tasks. Here's some questions you might ask. I'm not going to read these to you, but these will be available on the little share docs that we have. The PowerPoint will be. So I just put together some questions that you might want to ask your candidates as they're going through this. But those will come as you're doing each one of the tasks. So, there's another page here. How are you analyzing your own teaching effectiveness? That's a big one. So, okay, here we are, unacceptable support. You cannot edit a candidate's official materials that are going to be submitted. They can't give you their edTPA, and you cannot sit there and make changes or tell them what to write. You cannot offer critique of candidates' responses that provide specific alternative responses prior to submission. But you can say, oh, I think maybe you should relook at prompt 1 and think a little bit more deeply. Look at what it's asking you and see if that's actually in there. Or look at the understanding rubric progressions document for this rubric, see what a 3 is, and you tell me, do you have everything in there? Okay? Telling candidates which video clips to select, you can't do that. And you can't upload the edTPA responses on any public access social media websites, which you guys all know. So, okay. Any questions about that? Okay, be supportive, keep informed. Programs may set due dates. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You know, some programs, the due dates may change. Because in science, for example, you may have a due date for the instruction piece, but then the lesson that they chose to teach, the way the curriculum is designed doesn't happen until after that due date. So a lot of times programs are flexible because that particular lesson they chose to teach may be an awesome inquiry lesson, and it just would work amazingly well. So the programs would say, yeah, okay, we'll back that up for you. Okay, so just keep, have those conversations with your teacher candidate. They'll tell you, hopefully, what's up. And the programs will share their due dates with you as well. Programs may also have designated work days where the candidates are required to come back to campus, so be flexible. I know it's a day away from the classroom. They really shouldn't be away from the kids. That's a problem, but again, it is what it is. So, and then have uploading we have uploading deadlines, and that's the thing that we talked about earlier. Ours were pretty early because we wanted to get our data back before grades because we tied, since it wasn't consequential this year, and we wanted data that was more apples to apples and apples to oranges, so we made it consequential in the way of grades. They had to get this certain score for this grade, etc. So we had to have it before graduation. After this, that can go away. Some programs may still tie it to grades, but they have to have it in so they can graduate. So they have to get scores back. Yes?
Do you see or get copies of their edTPA portfolio, or do you just get a score?
After it's, you mean when they're done?
You're at the university.
The university gets a score for each rubric, for each candidate.
But you don't see what they submitted.
Well, the candidate, when they submit, can select someone in their program as a reviewer. So let's say, for example, they selected Dr. Miller to review their edTPA. So he can go on and open up every file and make sure everything is there. Can't edit it or anything or tell them what to write, but he can open it up and see that they got everything. He could even say, go back and look at prompt 1 again if you wanted to. But that's before it's submitted. After it's submitted, the only thing we get are the actual raw data, the scores. The candidate also gets the raw data scores. They get a little bit of feedback in that if they get, for example, a 3, they will give them the rubric language for what a 3 was. But that's it. There's no other feedback.
And then what was that other piece you said? If they get a 1, they can resubmit something?
It's a condition code.
And so is there a time frame in which that happens?
At NIU, condition codes, we just made that policy. Condition codes have to be remedied within 120 days.
So that's after they've received their score from edTPA?
Right. If they failed it, however, you know, just because they didn't do well, that's a different story. And we have a very elaborate set of rules now for determining, you know, if it's going to be a single or a full test retake. And we're going to talk about scoring here in a second to make more sense. Okay? Okay. How is it scored? There you go. There's 15 rubrics. Each rubric gets a score of 1 to 5. There's 5 tasks per rubric, so there's 5 planning, 5 instruction, 5 assessment. They get a score of 1 to 5, so that's a total of math people. What can they get? What's their highest score they can get? Yep, get a 75. Okay, they got a 5. Illinois has set the following cut scores because I'm going to explain to you why this is so low. Because 35, 75 is all 5s. We expect our candidates and everyone across the entire nation is looking for our candidates to be proficient out of the box, not necessarily a seasoned teacher that's exemplary, that's doing everything right and getting all 5s. So we expect them to be proficient. That would be a score of 45. Okay, all 3s. Illinois set their scores lower because, unlike NIU, a lot of programs across the state are just looking at the edTPA. And now it's consequential. And so it's like, oops. So I should say just started looking at it this past year. And so, of course, they sent letters to the state and all that kind of stuff. And so the way they remedied that situation is they're going to phase it in over time and make it more and more difficult. But really, the national cut score is a 42. That's not even all 3s. That's 3 points below 45. So in Illinois, in 5 years, the required passing score will be a 41. Okay. This is what the rubrics look like. They have 5 levels. 1 means struggling candidate is not ready to teach, he or she. Number 2, some skill that needs more practice to be the teacher of record. 3 is proficient, early novice teacher practices. 4, solid foundation of knowledge and skills. 5, exceptional beginning teacher practice. So, what happens with our candidates is, and this is nothing against anyone, but because they get their student teacher evaluations from you guys, and they get all 5s maybe, or 4s and 5s, and then they look at their edTPA and they come up with a bunch of 3s, they think the edTPA doesn't know what they're talking about because you gave them all 4s and 5s. But I think you would agree that by giving them 4s and 5s, you think they're ready to teach. You don't necessarily think that they're the best teacher out there that's got all the skills and blah, 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 blah. So maybe having that conversation with them would be, don't stop doing that because, that's very important to them. But I think what you're giving the candidates translates a little bit differently than what the edTPA, how it's assigned. So, okay, so this is an example. I'm not going to read through the rubrics with you, but so there's a document that I'm going to give all of you. It's Understanding Rubric Progressions, and you're going to get them for your disciplines. So there's one for science, there's one for math, history, and English. And you use that along with your handbook, and that will tell you what they need to be proficient for each one of the tasks, or each one of the rubrics. Okay? So this particular rubric is using assessments to inform instruction. So it'll tell you what the candidate needs to do in order to earn a 3, what they need to do for a 4 or 5, what a 1 would mean, that kind of thing. Just to make you more familiar. I love the Understanding Rubric Progressions document because it's the only one that I've seen so far, and I'm an official scorer, been through the process, I do local evaluations. It's the only document that really truly explains what candidates need to know and be able to do in language that the candidate can understand. So, okay, what's in it for candidates? It's authentic, educative, I can never say that word, assessment. It charts early professional development. It prepares them for the teacher evaluation system because it's aligned with who? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Well, national boards, but what? Danielson. It's aligned with the Danielson model, so helps them out with that. It poised them for earlier application for the national boards and for target practice, start performance. You should see, because they're getting all of this support in their higher ed programs, you should see better teacher candidates walking in your classroom, feel more comfortable with them working with your students in your classroom. Okay, what's in it for P12 schools? Sharper focus on teacher effectiveness as a positive impact on student learning. Candidates as prospective hires, because they're really good at their craft. And it generates really rich discussions between you and the teacher candidates. So, here's some additional resources. This will be that will be available on Google Docs. We do have a website at NIU that has an edTPA webinar that explains this whole thing again. Video permission slips are on there in the letter from the old state superintendent. And then there's also another webinar if you want to watch it. And if you have any questions ever throughout your entire dealings with your teacher candidates, please feel free to let me know, and I can answer your questions about edTPA or your programs know. Okay, programs, me, and thank you.